Hi everyone, this is Kieran Hovasapian again for Filmstorm Studios, and today I'm doing a very highly requested tutorial on how to make a third-person character system. And I just have some animations that I got from Mixamo.com, and as you can see there, this guy is blocking, and I actually have a couple of running ones. So I've got a run forward, run in place, run right, run left, and walk back. So I'm going to show you how to set up an animation system for your third-person character for this lady I have here. You might have seen her from some of the other updates I was doing for my old third-person system. So this is the one we're going to use. We're going to be using this animator a lot. So what you want to do is make sure you come to Window and click on Animator, and then that will load that in here for you. And you pretty much want to set up your scene the same way I have. I've just got my ground plane, character, make sure you name it like player model or something. And you want to make your camera kind of tilt down, looking at the player like a third person angle. And I've just got a light in here so we can see what's happening. And that's pretty much all I've done. So let's get started. What we want to do first is go to the hips and create a new game object. And we want to set this as the camera follow, because this is what our camera is actually going to follow. And all we want to do is create another empty game object out, not parented to anything, and call this the camera base. And we want to zero this guy out, so make it 0, 0. And we actually want to drag it to the camera follow, actually, and zero out there. So that way the camera base is at the exact same position as this camera follow is. So now we can drag the camera base out and parent the camera to that. So when you grab the base, you move that, the camera will move with it, and when you rotate it, it will do that. So let's just back that out. Lovely. Alrighty. So now we need to create an FSM that says for the camera base to always follow where this goes. So let's just go to our FSM maker. I'm going to call this camera follow player. And all we're going to do is just say follow. Oh, move to, I think it's actually called move towards. And what we're going to do is we're going to say this use owner object, because we're going to use this owner, and we're going to make it follow the camera follow. And we don't have to tick ignore vertical, because when she goes up and down hills, we want the camera to also go up and down. We never want it to finish, and we want its speed of around 20. Alrighty, so that's all that set up. We might have to tweak this later to get the right height for the camera, but we can sort that out later. Now let's get started on a simple animation. So what we want to do is when you have your character model, you want to make sure, let's dive into our player model, animation. You want to make sure that your animation type on your character is humanoid. And let's just click apply. So that will create a new avatar definition, which you can find inside here. And then this basically, I won't go into it, but it basically just creates a skeleton for your character that you can use in the game. Alrighty, let's dive back here. And you'll want to set your update mode to animate physics and your culling mode to always animate. Now we want to create a controller, because this is going to drive the animations, and it's going to contain all of our animation systems that we're going to use for our third person character. So what we want to do is right mouse click in our assets, create an animator controller. And we're going to call this our player movement. There we go, and let's double click on it, and it takes us straight to the animator, and this is where we'll design our animations. So there's two things you want to create first in parameters. You're going to want to create a float value and call this input X, and create another float and call this input Z. So basically, go back to our scene, if you look at this thing up here, this is X, so X is our left and right movement, and Z is our forward and back movement. So when we drive our animations, we're going to be using these two values, which we'll set up. Alrighty, so let's go into our animations and let's find an idle. So do we want her to kind of stand like that when she's idle, or this is a slightly different one? We've got an unarmed looking around idle. We've just got another one, or we have one where she's holding a sword. So actually, let's just get, well, which one do we prefer? Let's do this one because it's a bit more stylistic. And we're going to drag that in and call this guy movement. Because there's a little trick that I've discovered from tinkering for this for quite a while. And what you want to do is once you've dragged that in, just right mouse click and say create a new blend tree in state. And if you go into it, you'll notice the idle animation isn't in there anymore. So you want to change this blend type to a Cartesian 2D freeform. And you want to set the left one to input X and the right one to input Z. And let's just add a few motion fields. All we need to do is just make a few of these. Alrighty, now let's drag our idle in. Now this takes a bit of like brain work because this idle animation is set at position 0, 0. So if you can imagine you're not pushing anything on your controller or keyboard, your character's stick is basically going to be sitting at 0, 0. So now we want to have a run. Let's look up run. So we've got a run forward. We actually want to have a run forward. So this will do. However, you'll notice in the animations that here we have the root motion kind of lagging behind the character. And there's a simple way to fix this. If we turn off this guy, you'll notice that it keeps perfectly below him. So we'll want to quickly fix that up in our animations before we start. Alrighty, so let's just go back to our animations. Let's close this out. So basically what we want to do now is look up our run. So we have our run forward, the one that we just added last time. So let's try and find that. Let's look up run. And should be able to find our run forward. And that one's already been unticked, and you'll notice that it goes perfectly underneath. So let's drag this into here, which is our run forward. And we'll want to make this positive Y1 because we're going to be pushing forward. So you'll notice that she's sitting in idle now. And if you can imagine, we move our little stick and we're going to push it forward, and then she goes to a run. Actually, I might want to change this idle animation just as it's not actually syncing that well with her movement. So let's go for just a standing idle position. That should do the trick. So you'll notice now it kind of transitions a bit better. Push forward, push forward. So now we just want to quickly go and set up our left and right. So let's just look up left. Let's have a look for our left one. Standing walk left. All right. So we want to drag this guy in. It's -1x. So that basically means if we move our thing to the left, he's going to move to the left. So we move to the left. There he goes. He's moving that way. Although the animation hasn't been fixed up properly yet. So what we want to do is quickly jump back to our left one and just uncheck this guy. And now you'll notice it will work smoothly. Let's go to our right. Let's look up our right one. And let's find where he's walking to the right. Uncheck this box and drag this guy in. Let's zero out this one and zero out this one. And because this guy is going to be moving to the right, we want to make this a positive one. Lovely. So now you'll notice if we're moving our stick to the left, it's on our left, we move it back to idle, we move it to the right, he'll move to the right, back, forward, that's very nice. Alrighty, and you can speed them up as well, so you can say this is 1.5. and 1.5, so that will make him move a little bit faster. And then runs forward. So we can even make the run forward a little bit faster, 1.5 too. There you go. So now he'll double time it. Alrighty, now we just need to run backwards and we will be almost ready to set up a simple animation. So this one's been unchecked, so he runs backwards. Although that's not really the one we want something more like this. Let's uncheck that guy, drag this guy in. We can get rid of this other one, we won't need that for now. Make that 0 and -1 because this will actually move him backwards. So now you see that we kind of have a controller pattern set up. So we have him moving forward, we have him moving backwards, left, right, and an idle. Alrighty, so let's make this guy 1.5 so he's just as fast when he moves backwards. So there we go, move him back, left, right, and forward. Alrighty, now let's hook this up inside a simple character animation system. So let's jump back to our scene view, and let's click on our player model. And let's just jump back, let's get rid of this search, go back to assets, and let's drag this player movement onto our character. So let's drag that guy in there, and you'll see it has 5 clips in there. And it's got all this other information if you want to read up on it. And all we want to do is add a character controller, and let's reposition the box to fit our character. So let's drag this down a little and change the radius. That might be a little bit too small. So let's make this a little bit larger. That's a good size. So that should be perfect. And we can always adjust it later if we need to. Alrighty, so let's go and click on our player model, and let's just create a new FSM. I'm going to call this guy player movement. Player movement. Click edit, and this is where we're going to set up our system. So it's very important when you have your main character model just to quickly create a new game object and call this player object. And it will save you so much time in the future if you actually state what object your actual player is, because then you can reference it back whenever you're creating another FSM. So we're just going to say set object, and we're just going to pretty much go the same, set game object, and we're going to set this game object as a player object, and the player object is this guy. And then once it's done, we're going to say finished, moved on, and we're going to create our movement. So this is going to be all our movement. We're going to need 2 float variables like we had in our other one. So we're going to call this input X and input Z. Lovely. Let's drag this one and drag that one, so that way we have these 2 show up in our inspector. And the next thing we want to do is create an input axis vector. So that's gonna pretty much drive and get when we press our buttons on our keyboard or the controller on our stick, or the stick on our controller. So let's go input, or let's go get axis vector. And this has already been set up, our horizontal and vertical axis inside our project settings. And not that one, in our input. If you go down to here, here's our horizontal and vertical, so left or right, or A and D, or our vertical up and down, or S and W. So that's where you can find and change these keys if you wanted to make your game a little bit different. So let's jump back to our player, and we want to store our vector inside our input vector, and we're going to save this as a vector3 and put that in our inspector. And let's store this guy, and we want to create another one for our magnitude, because that sometimes helps as well. So let's create an input magnitude, and we don't need this guy, we want the input magnitude to be a float. And let's set that guy as a float, and it's going to be relative to our camera, wherever our camera is. Let's drag this guy in. So if we're pointing the camera to the right, the guy will still run forward, because that's kind of relative to where our guy is. Let me kind of give you a quick demonstration. So let's say our guy, how do we make this a bit bigger? This will do. right? So let's say this is our player and here is our camera. And our camera is pointing this way. Wherever our camera is pointing, this is where our guy will run forward. So say if our camera was moved around to the side, but our character was still looking forward. So this is our camera now. When we push forward on our keyboard, the character will actually run forward this way instead of running forward this way. If we didn't have anything set up in our relative to, if the camera was looking this way, the character would still run forward. If you kind of get that. So that's what makes that important. So that's my little demonstration over. And now we want to just quickly get the axis. So this is we just want to set 2 of these, and we want to say get the horizontal and get the vertical. There we go. And we're going to say store this one and then store vertical and then set animator. And we're going to set animator floats. Wait. Set animator floats. And these animator floats, oh, that's fine. We can keep that out because the animator float is actually on the actual model we're using. And we want to set input X to the value of input X every frame. And then we want to set input Z to the value of input Z every frame. So if we give this a quick test, let's see what's going to happen when we press play. So it's going to take a second to compile. And look, I'm pushing forward on the keyboard. We're moving forward, back, left, and right. Alrighty, that's really cool. Now, I can show you how to quickly create a simple camera system. Let's go back to our camera base, and you'll remember that our camera base is set at this point, which is following this camera follow on our character's hips. So what we can do is create a new FSM here. We're going to call this look around. And this one's really simple. We're just going to say mouse look. I can show you how to create a controller system for your Xbox controller if you really want. Just let me know. And we're going to call this mouse look. We're going to turn the sensitivity down to about 3.3. These other ones are fine for now. And you'll notice now that when we press play, I can actually look around the character while she's running around. That's pretty cool, huh? You'll notice that the input is actually inverted. So there's a quick way to fix this. Just go to your project settings, input, your mouse Y, and invert that guy. And then you'll notice if I play again, it is all synchronized. So let me just turn off the gizmos. Now, you'll notice how I said that if I push forward and the camera's on her side, she runs forward. We need one more step to make it all sync up properly. So let's go back here. Let us click on our camera, create an empty object. And we're just going to point this guy forward and move him forward quite a bit. And, or actually, we don't need to do it off our camera. We want to do it off our camera base, my bad. And just move this forward. And we're going to call this character look at. And let's go back to our player model. Let's create another FSM. And we're just going to say look forward. There we go. And we're going to say idle. And we're going to create another state. And we're going to say move or look forward. And we're going to create a FSM called input magnitude. And this is going to be where that other one we set up comes in handy. And we're going to set a new event. Say look at now. So create this one, drop that in there, and this guy's gonna, when it's finished, drop that back here. And we're just gonna say get FSM float. The FSM we're gonna get is from the player movement, and it's gonna be the input magnitude. Store that as the input magnitude that we just set up every frame. And we're gonna do a float compare. We're gonna compare the input magnitude. If it's greater than 0.5, we're gonna say look at it now. And if it's also equal to 0.5, we're going to say look at it now. And that should be all that done. Let's just drag this in here, copy. If it is 0.4, so if it's equal to 0.4 or less than, we're going to say finished and finished. So that's all that set up. And all we're going to do here is just say look at. And we're going to just be looking at the target object. So in the target object is the character look at. You notice it creates a little vertical line. We want to say keep vertical so the character doesn't actually point upwards and doesn't look right. So let's just press play, and you'll notice that when I move the camera, she doesn't move, but when I actually push forward, she runs to where my character is pointing. And you'll notice she actually snaps a little bit. So what we can do is actually fix this up by switching this from just a look at to a smooth look at. So let's just quickly relink this character look at. The speed will be around 5, that's fine. Make the finish tolerance 0. And let's just uncheck that, bring this down and play again. And you'll notice she won't pop in, she'll actually smoothly turn towards. And it also works when you press backwards, she'll run backwards. So this has pretty much been a very long part 1 of creating your own third-person character. In the next tutorial, I'll show you how to set up a simple damage system and weapon system, and we'll link up some of those good-looking animations that we have sitting in our library. Alrighty guys, thanks for checking this out. I hope you find this interesting. I've had lots of questions about it. So yeah, of course, if you have any questions, let me know in the comments and I'll get back to you or create a little separate tutorial to explain something more in depth. And I'll see you guys in part 2 of our third-person character tutorial.